What if I told you the greatest Western ever made was secretly about Hollywood destroying itself from within? What if the hero who stands alone against evil represented a screenwriter being abandoned by his own industry? What if John Wayne hated this film so much he called it the most un-American thing he had ever seen? Gary Cooper was so sick during filming that he could barely stand, but his weakness made the character stronger. The theme song that became legendary was almost cut because the studio thought it was too repetitive, and the clock ticking toward noon was actually about a deadline for naming names. These are 20 weird facts you never knew. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Fact 1. The film was a blacklist allegory. High Noon was written by Carl Foreman as a direct allegory about the Hollywood blacklist and HUAC. The story of a man abandoned by his community mirrored what was happening to accused communists in Hollywood. Foreman himself was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee during production of this film. He refused to name names and was subsequently blacklisted from the American film industry entirely. The townspeople who abandoned Marshall Cain represented Hollywood colleagues who abandoned their friends to save themselves. The film was Foreman's angry statement about cowardice and betrayal in his own profession directly. Every citizen who refuses to help Cain was based on real people. Fact 2. Carl Foreman was blacklisted during production. Carl Foreman was subpoenaed by HUAC while High Noon was still being filmed in Hollywood. He refused to cooperate with the committee and would not name former communist associates publicly. His business partner Stanley Kramer distanced himself from Foreman to protect their production company. Foreman was removed from the production before filming was completed, and his credit was disputed. He fled to England, where he continued his career under pseudonyms for years afterward. The irony of being abandoned while writing about abandonment was not lost on Foreman at all. His screenplay about moral courage became a test of moral courage that he passed alone. The townspeople who betrayed Cain were the colleagues who betrayed Foreman in real life. Fact 3. John Wayne despised the film. John Wayne called High Noon the most un-American film he had ever seen publicly and repeatedly. He hated the portrayal of Western townspeople as cowards who would abandon their lawmen shamefully. Wayne believed the film insulted American values of community and collective courage against threats. He was also politically opposed to Carl Foreman's refusal to cooperate with HUAC investigations. Wayne helped drive Foreman out of Hollywood and celebrated his blacklisting as justice served properly. He later made Rio Bravo specifically as a response to what he saw as High Noon's offensive message. Wayne believed real Americans would never abandon a sheriff facing outlaws like the townspeople did. His hatred for the film lasted until his death decades after its release. Fact 4. Howard Hawks made Rio Bravo as response. Director Howard Hawks shared John Wayne's contempt for High Noon's portrayal of Western values completely. He found the idea of a marshal begging for help from civilians to be disgraceful and cowardly. Hawks made Rio Bravo in 1959 specifically to show how a real Western hero would handle the situation. In his version, the sheriff refuses help and handles the outlaws with professional dignity instead. The film was a deliberate rebuke to everything High Noon represented politically and dramatically. Hawks and Wayne collaborated on what they considered a more authentically American Western narrative. The rivalry between the two visions of the Western hero continues to be debated by film scholars. Two classic films emerged from one director's hatred for another's masterpiece. Fact 5. Gary Cooper was extremely ill during filming. Gary Cooper was suffering from serious health problems throughout the production of High Noon. He had a bleeding ulcer and hip problems that made standing and walking genuinely painful constantly. The exhaustion and physical weakness visible on screen was completely real rather than performed. Cooper's lined face and weary movements came from actual suffering rather than makeup or acting. Director Fred Zinnemann recognized that Cooper's illness enhanced the character's desperation and vulnerability. The marshal's aging and tired appearance made his courage more impressive rather than less believable. Cooper's real pain became Cain's fictional burden in ways that elevated every scene. Fact 6. Cooper won his second Academy Award. Gary Cooper won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his portrayal of Marshal Will Cain deservedly. It was his second Oscar following his win for Sergeant York a decade earlier in 1941. Cooper was too ill to attend the ceremony, and John Wayne accepted the award on his behalf. The irony of Wayne accepting for a film he despised was noted by observers at the time. Wayne praised Cooper's performance while privately condemning the film's political message constantly afterward. Cooper's understated performance became the template for stoic heroism in Western cinema permanently. His ability to convey inner turmoil through minimal expression influenced generations of actors afterward. The man who could barely stand created a hero audiences could not forget. Fact 7. Grace Kelly was only 22 years old. Grace Kelly was just 22 years old when she played Amy Kane, the Marshal's young Quaker bride. She had made only one film before High Noon launched her towards stardom and royalty eventually. Her youth and beauty contrasted effectively with Cooper's weathered 50-year-old appearance throughout the film. The age difference between them was significant but served the story about sacrifice and commitment. Kelly brought an innocence that made her character's pacifist beliefs seem genuine rather than convenient. Her eventual decision to kill to save her husband represented an enormous moral transformation. The young actress held her own against a Hollywood legend twice her age impressively. Kelly would become one of the biggest stars in Hollywood before becoming Princess of Monaco. Fact 8. The film runs in near real time. High Noon runs approximately 85 minutes and covers roughly the same amount of story time. The film begins around 10:35 a.m. and concludes just after the noon train arrives as scheduled. This near real-time structure was innovative and created unbearable tension throughout the narrative. Clocks appear constantly throughout the film, reminding audiences that time is running out for Kane. The ticking clock became a character itself, creating pressure that audiences felt physically while watching. The technique had rarely been used so effectively in Hollywood cinema before this film. Every wasted moment of Kane seeking help increased the desperation of his situation dramatically. Fact 9. The theme song was almost cut. The theme song "Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darlin'" was almost removed from the final film entirely. Producer Stanley Kramer thought the song was too repetitive and would annoy audiences quickly. Director Fred Zinnemann fought to keep the song because it reinforced the film's emotional themes perfectly. The song plays throughout the film as a constant reminder of Kane's isolation and need. Tex Ritter's performance became iconic, and the song won the Academy Award for Best Original Song. The melody has been parodied and referenced countless times in the decades since release. A song that almost disappeared became one of the most recognizable movie themes ever created. Kramer was wrong, and Zinnemann's artistic instincts proved correct about the music's importance. Fact 10. The film was shot in 32 days. High Noon was filmed in approximately 32 days, which was remarkably fast for such a complex production. The tight schedule forced efficiency and focus that benefited the final product significantly throughout. Director Fred Zinnemann had planned every shot meticulously before production began for maximum effectiveness. The small budget of approximately $7,500,000 required creative solutions rather than expensive spectacle constantly. The constraints pushed everyone to find the emotional core of every scene without distraction. The speed of production matched the urgency of the story being told on screen perfectly. No time was wasted, just as Kane has no time to waste seeking help from cowards. The limitations became assets that enhanced rather than diminished the final film. Fact 11. Katy Jurado brought authentic Mexican representation. Katy Jurado, who played Helen Ramirez, was one of the few authentic Mexican actresses in Hollywood then. Her presence brought genuine cultural authenticity that the film desperately needed to feel real. Jurado's performance as Kane's former lover added complexity to the moral landscape of the story. She played a businesswoman with agency and intelligence, rare for minority characters in 1950s westerns. Her scenes with Grace Kelly crackled with tension between two very different women sharing a man. Jurado received critical acclaim, and the performance opened doors for her Hollywood career afterward. Her character refused to be a passive victim and left town on her own terms. Authentic representation enhanced the film in ways that tokenism could never have achieved. Fact 12. The cinematography used deep focus. Cinematographer Floyd Crosby used deep focus photography that kept foreground and background equally sharp. The technique allowed audiences to see Kane's isolation within spaces that should have offered community support. Every empty chair and closed door remained visible as Kane searches for help throughout town. The visual style emphasized the moral landscape as much as the physical environment constantly. Crosby won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography for his outstanding artistic work here. The black and white photography created stark contrasts between light and shadow throughout beautifully. The visual austerity matched the moral simplicity of the story being told on screen. Every frame was composed to reinforce the themes that form and screenplay established clearly. Fact 13. The villain never appears until the end. Frank Miller, the outlaw coming to kill Kane, never appears on screen until the final confrontation. His absence throughout the film creates dread that a visible villain could not have achieved. The townspeople speak of Miller with terror that audiences absorb without seeing any evidence directly. The technique builds anticipation that makes the final showdown enormously satisfying when it arrives. Miller becomes a symbol of inevitable doom rather than just another Western bad guy simply. His delayed appearance was a bold storytelling choice that many thought would not work effectively. The fear of Miller proves more powerful than Miller himself ultimately turns out to be. Invisible evil created more tension than any amount of screen time could have generated. Fact 14. The film influenced countless Westerns. High Noon's influence on the Western genre extended far beyond its initial release and reception. The lone hero abandoned by society became a template that filmmakers returned to repeatedly afterward. The moral complexity that John Wayne hated became the standard for serious Western storytelling eventually. Films from The Wild Bunch to Unforgiven owe debts to what Zinnemann achieved with this production. The real-time structure has been imitated in countless thrillers across multiple genres since release. The ticking clock building toward inevitable confrontation became a standard suspense technique worldwide. Every Western that asks whether civilization deserves saving echoes questions High Noon raised first. Fact 15. Lloyd Bridges played the jealous deputy. Lloyd Bridges played Harvey Pell, the deputy who refuses to help Kane for personal reasons. His character resents Kane for not recommending him as the replacement marshal after retirement. The jealousy and ambition that drive Harvey represent another form of moral failure in the town. Bridges brought complexity to a character who could have been simply villainous in lesser hands. Harvey's reasons for abandoning Kane are understandable even if his choice is ultimately cowardly, completely. The performance showed that ordinary human weakness was as dangerous as outlaw violence directly. Bridges would become a television star, but this remains one of his finest film performances. Personal grievance proved as destructive as organized crime in the end. Fact 16. The church scene captures American hypocrisy. The scene where Kane asked the church congregation for help became the film's most controversial moment. The townspeople debate whether to assist their marshal while he stands listening to their excuses. They cite practical concerns and political calculations rather than moral obligations to help him. The scene was read as an indictment of American society's failure to stand against McCarthyism directly. Religious people choosing safety over principle represented the failure of moral institutions during the blacklist. The sequence enraged conservatives who saw it as an attack on American values and communities. Foreman intended exactly that criticism and embedded it within the Western genre cleverly. The church offered no sanctuary, just as Hollywood offered no protection to the accused. Fact 17. The marshal badge drop became iconic. The final image of Kane dropping his marshal's badge in the dirt became one of cinema's iconic moments. The gesture represented his disgust with the community that abandoned him in his hour of need. The badge that should symbolize honor becomes worthless when the community it protects proves cowardly. Kane literally throws away the symbol of his service to people who deserve nothing from him. The image has been referenced and parodied countless times in films and television shows since. The dropping badge said more than any dialogue could about disillusionment and moral judgment completely. Fact 18. Fred Zinnemann defended the film's politics. Director Fred Zinnemann defended High Noon against political attacks throughout his life consistently. He argued the film was about moral courage that transcended specific political circumstances entirely. Zinnemann was an Austrian immigrant who understood fascism and the failure of communities to resist it. His perspective on cowardice came from European history as much as Hollywood's contemporary betrayals. He stood by Carl Foreman even as others abandoned the blacklisted screenwriter to save themselves. Zinnemann's loyalty demonstrated the courage that the film celebrated and that Hollywood largely lacked. The director lived the values his film promoted in ways that added moral authority. His career continued successfully, but he never forgot what had happened to his collaborator. Fact 19. The film earned 4 Academy Awards. High Noon won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Actor and Best Film Editing and Best Original Song. The film was also nominated for Best Picture and Best Director, but lost both categories. The awards validated the artistic achievement despite the political controversy surrounding the production. The Academy honored a film that many powerful industry figures wanted to see fail completely. The recognition proved that quality could overcome political opposition when the work was undeniable. Gary Cooper's Oscar was particularly meaningful given his real suffering during production. The awards did not save Carl Foreman from the blacklist, but acknowledged his brilliant screenplay. Hollywood celebrated the art while punishing the artist who created it. Fact 20. The running time creates unbearable suspense. The tight 5-minute running time creates suspense that longer films could not achieve as effectively. Every scene serves the relentless movement toward the noon confrontation without distraction or padding. No subplot is allowed to dilute the focus on Kane's desperate search for help anywhere. The economy of storytelling puts audiences inside Kane's experience of time running out constantly. Modern films often run over 2 hours, but rarely achieve this level of sustained tension. The compression of time makes every rejection more painful, and every ally more precious. The film demonstrates that brevity can be more powerful than epic length when used correctly. Less proved to be infinitely more in creating memorable cinema.